Hello and good afternoon. It's This is going to be video 730. It is February 7th, 2021, and I want to make a video today. Not exactly sure where it's going to end up. It's going to start off with sort of the what I almost want to call is the transgender explosion, although that may be too much of a hyperbole for kind of what has happened over the last 2 weeks. Um, President Biden has just finished his second week of office, or I think we're maybe like 15 or 16 days into it, and it really is just somewhat phenomenal. If your antenna is bent towards trans stuff, you just kind of things kind of filter their way through. Um, but much like he promised he would do. Not necessarily sure if it was day one, it might have been day two. But President Biden um, reversed President Trump's ban on transgender folks in the military. He also mentioned that there would be a huge shift away from a lot of what President Trump had did as far as you know, allowing the discrimination and President Trump removed civil protections and healthcare stuff, just a lot of really negative and nasty stuff against transgender folks. Um, for whatever reason, President Trump, I think to appeal to his base of kind of, uh, I had made a video about islands of hate. I keep on pointing up islands of hate. You know, there's something about President Trump that just you know, appealed towards those islands of hate. And you can watch that for more information on that. But um, in the time since then, there's really been a bit of a pushback, and I guess I wanted to make a video about that. Um, Earlier in the week, a and I made a video about this too. I think the 8-year-old girl in Oklahoma who was expelled from her school because she said she had a crush on another girl, and uh, apparently it was a Christian quotes Christian school who fired or expelled the girl and her brother because they didn't adhere to the school's student handbook. And what's interesting is the school got PPE loan money from the COVID, so they got federal funds. Usually, when you have federal funds, because of the separation of church and state, you can't, you know, you can't. There's certain things that the federal government can do if you're receiving federal funds, and I guess that kind of goes into Title IX and sports and everything, which we'll get to in a minute. We're going to talk about transgender people in sports before the end of the video, but we don't want to get there yet. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Um, but anyway, so the school got federal money and kind of had some hate stuff going on. But apparently, again, under the Trump administration, you could do that. You could do that. And so you can't, you know, um, you can't get too much up in arms because, you know, 2 weeks ago it was legal, and uh, there's only so much an executive order or the president's statement can do when there's rules on the books. President Trump managed to, put legislation into place, and so again, just because you have, it's a breath of fresh air to have the leader of the free world, um, President of the United States, say, we're not going to have bullying, we're not going to hate people, da 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 da. I mean, that was a breath of fresh air, and we've yet to have that legal, the legal, it's coming, it's coming. You got to give him time. Day 16 of his presidency, let's say. But since President Trump kind of did away with the transgender ban, he also went on a day or two later to talk about how his administration was going to not tolerate bullying and hatred groups and wanted to become somewhat of a leader in the world for LGBTQ plus rights, trans rights in the world. I mean, in the world, not necessarily just in the United States, but in the world. And that's a huge, huge, huge step for trans people everywhere, assuming that he follows through, and I have a feeling he will, because he's done so far what he promised to do. And we're ready for that. We're ready for that. But in response, when Keegan made these bold and appropriate, in my opinion, statements, there was some pushback, especially from those islands of hate who gained power under President Trump. And one of them was from a number of states who then were like, well, if the federal government is going to keep us from being hateful of certain groups in society, then we have to pass our own state legislation, and then it becomes a state versus a federal issue. You rile up people. The federal government is doing this against us, and isn't that wrong? We have the power. We're a state. We're the United States of America, the federal government. I mean, this is, it happens every so often when the president. I mean, for positive and negative things, you could have a president like President Trump. He was, a white supremacist, and a state could come out and say, well, we don't believe in white supremacy in this state, and so we're going to be against the president. So it's not always a bad thing. But the with the transgender stuff, I mean, it was within a week. I mean, it was within a couple of days. State legislatures started writing out, again, anti-trans legislation. It was on Yahoo, and it just kind of like, one person comes along and says, hey, wouldn't it be great if we all loved one another and got along and treat other people like you want to be treated? Let's not hate each other. Let's help each other. And immediately you have people who are like, no, 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 no. It's our right to, hate people and discriminate and everything else. So you would expect it to happen. But like I said, it was, I mean, just within days, anti-transgender legislation in states. And then you had people I made mention in the previous video, the Army chaplain who wrote in the Military Times about how transgender folks were unfit for duty because they're like flat earthers denying reality. And isn't it amazing how someone accuses something else of something they're guilty of? Here we have someone saying, these people are not accepting reality, and yet that person is not accepting the reality that you can't hatred against groups because they're different than you. You know what I mean? It's just kind of funny how that kind of happens. But that's very true with people anyway. You often see in other people a reflection of the things you don't like about yourself. But we talked about that before too. And along with the trans stuff, then there was a governor of a state, I believe it was Mississippi, who then criticized President Biden's pro-transgender agenda, claiming that it was wrong to be pro-transgender and pushing children towards being transgender, which that's a huge, huge step, seeing as how quite the reverse was true for a number of years. In fact, I would say still majority of, well, maybe not the majority, but a good chunk of, when I was a kid, the majority, okay, somewhere between 1989 and 2021, the, the social consciousness grew to the point that it wasn't that way. But when I was a kid, it was the reverse. It was a heterosexual, xenophobic, transphobic society that was pushing kids towards a non-transgender agenda because that was the norm. And so again, like this pushback again from someone saying, "Hey, let's just be nice to each other and live and let live, and let's support each other." Here you have, oh, you're pushing children towards this transgender agenda. Again, you have those islands of hate. Um, there's a story I read when I was in middle school. It was Shirley Jackson wrote it. It's called The Lottery, and it's about a town that holds a yearly lottery, and whoever wins it gets stoned to death as a way of appeasing God. And the town will have beneficial crops and good luck. And at the end of the story, there's someone who, the person who's getting stoned is about to get stoned to death is like, how barbaric is this that we continue to do this? And people are like, oh, you're just saying that because you're a coward. You don't want to sacrifice for the good of the community. And there's someone who says, there's always been a lottery, like it's justified because there's always been that way. And that's the way I feel this person, governor of Mississippi, who's sitting there going, we're pushing children towards transgender, that that anti-trans mentality has just always been there, and it's what we should fight for and everything else. Where I think it's quite the reverse. Um, if you have children who do feel transgender, I can tell you firsthand, you're doing them quite a favor by allowing them the opportunity to express themselves and to see if it's what they want to do. And isn't it, and I made mention of this in my last video as well, that we are really moving towards a non-binary system. And, you know, um, the idea of a sandbox where you get to live and test and try and, see what you like and what you feel like. And then, it's almost like maybe if you got to add some structure to it, maybe it can be like a confirmation or just hey, I've tried what I wanted to try, and this is what makes sense to me, and this is the way I'm going to live my life for the immediate future: heterosexual, homosexual, transgender, non-binary, or just I am what I am, you know, heterosexual, homosexual, whatever. But here again, you have someone who's like, oh, you're pushing them towards it. No, I promise you. And my experience in growing up, I wouldn't want to wish being transgender on anybody. Okay? I wouldn't want to wish that on anybody. It's much, much better to be aligned and for the biological sex you were born with to be aligned with how your gender is. It's much better. And that in and of itself is a binary statement. So my train of thought, my how this is up here, this is outdated. Okay? Am I an island of hate? No, I don't think so, because I'm recognizing, hey, it's an old concept. Eventually, yeah, I mean, we're moving towards a non-binary world, you know. Um, and then because again, Title IX, school sports, um, people just lost their fucking minds. You shouldn't let trans athletes compete, and you know, uh, much like the Scouts, the Boy Scouts, and the Girl Scouts. If you want my opinion, um, there shouldn't be Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. Call it scouting. You know, call it scouting. Um, and I've participated in Boy Scouts. Obviously, I'm an Eagle Scout. Okay, but you know, if you really want to be honest, take the gender out of it. You know, but you have I would call them islands of hate. You have these previous structures of, well, if you're born with the penis, then you must like camping and learning about woodcraft and, learning how to. I mean, the whole point of them, and I've said this before too, the merit badge program is vocational training. So as a child, you get, as a young adult, excuse me, my sons are fighting. As a young adult, you get exposed to plumbing and electrical work and being a firefighter and in education, conservation, environmental science. I mean, all of these wonderful things that could be to a career. Okay, that's Boy Scouting. My experience with Girl Scouting through my daughter and in my own education and dealing with Girl Scouting, um, they have civic programs as well. But what is Girl Scouts known for? Selling cookies. Okay, selling cookies. True or not? Is that what you're going to walk away from? Girl Scouts have the Golden Award, which is very similar to the Boy Scouts. But again, take it away. There's an episode of Parks and Recreation, where you have basically the Girl Scouts of the county, and then you have the Boy Scouts, and you have Ron Swanson, and I forgot the girl's name already. And again, do away with it and just have a program or different programs. Figure out what you want to do. So back to the idea of sports. Um, yeah, if you want to be honest, do away with it. Do away with women's sports and men's sports. Do away with boys basketball and women's basketball. Okay? And just have basketball. Just have football. Let girls play football. Okay? If a girl wants to get in there, put on a defensive lineman pads and do her best and beat the living shit out of another boy or another girl, let them do it. Okay? But instead, we have those binary poles. That's what I'm going to call. I'm going to call them binary poles in structures that say, oh no, if you're born with a vagina, then you should be playing girls track and field. If you're born with a penis, then you should be playing boys track and field. Because boys' bodies are different from girls' bodies. Biologically, yes, that is very, very true. And your average boy is going to be more stereotypically fit and stronger than your average girl. That said, there is no baseline for testosterone or estrogen for boys or girls. Okay, you're talking about a vagina versus a penis, and call it that if you must. You know, uh, you know, uh, again, girls basketball, call it vagina basketball, penis basketball, if you must, if you must. And the examples that I saw this last week, again, in response to the president's, hey, we're going to have equality. Again, people have lost their motherfucking minds. Parents, well, my girl soccer team, we can't compete against a trans girl, you know. Um, and the examples that I've seen, a lot of the memes and whatnot that I've seen, it shows a guy in a dress, uh, you know, a 350-pound guy in a dress or wearing lipstick and saying, yeah, she's just a girl on the girls' team. You have to look at how old the boy or the girl is. When did they start taking estrogen or testosterone? Where are they at in their puberty track, whatever else? And then you have to ask yourself, why are you playing the sport? Are you playing girls soccer to get the experience of playing a game with other people and traveling and being your best academic self? You're playing a fucking game, okay? You're playing a game, and somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. And I can tell you from my own experience playing soccer, um, there's a reason why schools or counties and cities and counties and schools have a varsity team and a junior varsity team, or when I played soccer, you had Class A, Class B, Class C. It's because people look at it as a very competitive thing, and if your son or daughter is talented, be they blessed with a higher oxygen capacity or strength or muscles or body mass, and you want them to compete with other similarly made people, um, then yeah, if that's your goal, you know, um, I think you can't get away from the fact that an 18 or 19-year-old boy, genetic penis person, for lack of a better word, who starts hormones is going to be at an advantage physically to a vagina person of the same age on average. But again, that said, when you get to those upper echelon sports, when you get to the varsity and the super class people, you've got the cream of the crop. You've got girls who, I mean, there was a girl in my flight in the Air Force. Man, she could kick any guy's ass. Okay. Now, again, um, do you have the Air Force and you have the girls' Air Force and the boys' Air Force, the men's Air Force and the women's Air Force? No, you just have the Air Force. So it's kind of a bit of a handy. I don't know. There's a bit of gray area there. And I read the ALCU's thing about myths and truths. And I can tell you, I remember from the last Olympics, there was a track runner from Africa, a biological cis gal, who was ejected. She lost her gold medal because her testosterone level was so high. And the drug testing people said, first thing was she must be on performance enhancing drugs or human growth hormone or something. And after a while, she got her gold medal back because she was able to prove over a prolonged period of time that her testosterone level is just higher than her contemporary people. So I guess the question then becomes, are you going to kick her off the team? And this was a response by a political person. They said, well, what we need to do, because we can't look in their shorts and see if they have a penis or a vagina, um, we need to have some sort of testing. We're going to test their DNA testing and see what their amount of testosterone is, and then if they're over a certain amount, then they must be a penis person, and so we're going to kick them out. But here, this gold medalist from Africa, naturally, just she had a high testosterone count. Okay, so I leave that for people better than I, but it just kind of shot out of, because again we had this trans, and it kind of people surfaced and whatnot. So I don't know if I'm making any sense at this point. I've kind of run out of steam. Again, I think again, if you're going to call something girls something or women's something, it is unfair to um, not include transgender people. But I think also too, um, you have to recognize that from a purely physical point of view, um, trans women are going to have a leg up on their competition. But then again, that said, there's variances in the trans women community as well, and the trans men community as well. Are you going to do the same thing with like men's weightlifting? Are you going to ban trans men? Or you know what I mean? You really got to think this through, and you really got to ask yourself, why are we doing this the way that we're doing it? Is the reason these islands of hate, and now they have something they can grab onto and say, see, aha, much like the Bible, grab that and say, see, aha, there's trans folk, those outlets for their own hatred. Um, or is there really something going on here? And if you're going to say, well, it's because they can have more testosterone, well, what do you do with the women who naturally have more testosterone? Are you going to kick them out? And then at that point, are you really, and you win the race or you win the championship or you get the award, you're a gold medalist, and you say, I'm the best I'm the best woman in the world of those women with a testosterone count, under 200. Or are you going to say I'm the women's champion? So you can be a little realistic about what's going on there. So kind of talked about a lot of different things, and I kind of want to talk about one more thing, and then this will be kind of the end of it. And that is, or maybe I should just end it here, and we'll do another video. Let's do that instead, because I want to break these up. So I'll end this here, and again, this has just been some trans happenings, and you know, I forgot what I saw it on. It's just things are a pendulum, and years and years and years of just kind of having the world shit on us, and nobody give a crap other than trans folk. It's interesting that the president does something significant. Why can't we all just love one another and respect one another? And that's when the crazies come out. That's when those islands of hate come out. You know, I think it's kind of interesting. And we'll see what happens when we go forward. And again, we're moving in this non-binary direction, and we're gonna look like fools. I'm gonna look like a fool if I don't already. We are gonna look like absolute fools in 10, 20 years. Maybe even we do already, like I said, moving into this non-binary world. And we're just gonna people are gonna look back and go, how primitive, how archaic were they in 2021? All right, so I'm gonna end it here. But until next time, I wish you the best of luck. And my next video is going to be my plan for peace. So, love you. Good luck. Bye bye.